Welcome to weaning day. Our winter lamb is ready to be separated from her mom to allow the mom to gain back body condition. The weaning lamb will call out to her mom for a few days until she is weaned.
So we are just getting into March, and it's time to wean Holly. She was our December born ewe, and she is a giant. Looking at the other ewes that we have, she's almost as big as they are, the other ewe lambs, and they were born in the spring. So she is definitely a giant. Her mom was really big, and she's grown really fast, and she was ready to wean probably a lot quicker than these ones were, which is just really a testament to her mom. We call Star. It's just a testament to how nice of a ewe she really is. So yeah, the lambs are going to be real vocal whenever they're being weaned, and sometimes the mom will be too, because they call back trying to locate them, and it takes a little time. It's better if you separate them further so that they're not seeing and hearing each other so much, but they'll still call out for a while. Really important though when you are weaning is you got to make sure and keep the lambs fed. You don't want them to be sitting around hungry, because that just makes the whole situation that much worse. But you do want to make sure and pull your lambs before their mom starts to lose a lot of condition. They're going to lose some condition, and that's okay. It's to be expected. They're feeding the lamb, and it's taking a toll on them, but you got to be careful and make sure that you're not letting them get run down too far. You know, if they're really starting to get skinny, you probably waited too long. But the great thing about pasture-raised lambs, especially when you're making sure to just keep them on forage, is that they already know how to do it from almost from day one. They're learning from their mom, they're learning from the other sheep that what they do all day is they graze. So They pick it up really, really quick. But we're not, I don't know if we're quite at spring just yet. We get a little bit of growth happening. We got some blossoms in the trees. We do have some grass and stuff starting to grow. It's just not had much time to get any size. So we still have a little bit of forage left over from winter time, and that's basically what they're cleaning up now. We got a lot of clover starting to grow, but it's not really ready yet. It's just starting. But we're able to run these sheep with just electric sheep net, decent forage, and sheep minerals. We're not on a medication schedule. We don't feed a lot of hay. Let's see, this year we made it through most of the winter, and we had just started to feed one bale of hay. So we've used like a quarter of a medium round bale so far. So I think we had to start using a little bit of hay probably right at February about. And because we just didn't have enough of the really thick, good forage left over. Winter stockpile left for them. So the areas that we had left were thinner, so we started giving them a bunch of hay whenever they were in a thinner spot. And sometimes they would eat some and sometimes they wouldn't. Just depends on how good the forage was. But they've had full bellies all winter, and we haven't actually spent any money on hay or anything to feed them. You know, we don't really supplement them with grain. We do use grain sometimes just to move them. And sometimes just to give them a treat, but we don't really supplement their feed with it. It's really more of a treat or helping us with a certain situation. If we need to catch one, if we're trying to separate them or something like that, the grain is a great tool for that. But you got to be careful because it does throw off their rumen. You know, giving them a little bit here and there usually isn't a problem, but any change to their rumen can throw them off a little bit. Even with the forage, as you're moving them around the property, different kinds of things that are growing that they're not used to eating, if they eat a little too much of it, sometimes you'll notice they'll get a messy rear end for maybe a day or two, but it usually just goes right away. In that case, we just usually give them a little bit of baking soda till it clears up. And honestly, that usually does the trick. But for the most part, you know, we don't have to medicate them. It's just unnecessary. They don't need it. They're on fresh ground. They don't come back to a spot that they've been on already for at least 90 days. It's usually a lot more than that, though. It's usually more like 4 months before they come back to it. So we don't really have any worry about parasites, and we don't have any worry about them being in dirty conditions as far as, you know, their own waste, because they're always on fresh ground. We usually move them twice a day, especially in the wintertime when there's less forage in their area. But if they're in a really good spot over the winter, we might leave them for the whole day. It just depends. The other thing we got to take into account is how much impact they're having on the soil. We don't want a bunch of erosion, so we don't want to, if the ground is really soft, we don't want to leave them there for too long because they'll really muck it up. But for the most part, they're moving once or twice a day. And we had a really good rotation this year. It was really cool. We only had to utilize just a small part of a round bale so far, and we already have some spring growth happening. So we're expecting lambs this month, more towards the end of the month. But we got at least one that kind of looks like she's ready to pop already, which is surprising. She's getting really big. She's already got a giant bag formed. How you doing there, Holly? Yep, Holly's let me know that she does miss her mom. But that's typical, guys. She's doing good with these other ewes over here. She'll get over it here pretty quick. So we got, this is Taggy here. She's expecting. Got JoJo here. Betty here. They're both expecting. Joy, that little white one right there, she's expecting. I believe Diamond here is expecting. And then the smaller ewes, I'm not sure about. I don't think any of those ones are expecting, but I'm not sure about Rudy too. She's never had one. She didn't have one last year. She's our ewe that actually has the little horns. And she's really cool. She's got a super cool personality. She's really funny. But I can't tell yet. Alright, so this ewe right here, that's Star. And there's Oreo. That's Betty's spring ram. Yeah, but little Star, she's Holly's mom. I wouldn't say little Star, she's huge. She's got to be the biggest ewe. And she's lost some condition now from feeding the lamb and all that, but she was a giant. I bet she's gonna, now that she's not having to feed the lamb, she's gonna put on a lot of weight again. But I mean, she's probably bigger now even than the other ewes that had a spring lamb. So she's just a really big sheep. So we got all the rams separated over here, and then with the one ewe, I did intend to leave some of the other ewes, the smaller ones over here, or the younger ones, have them separated out, but that's okay. We don't have a handling system, so it's all done by hand. So when you're using sheep net and you're just trying to finesse it a lot more, you got to be a lot more careful. You start getting them stressed out and trying to chase them, you'll never catch them that way. A lot of times if you're trying to catch a lamb, you chase them around a little bit and they actually will run straight into the fence, and then you can catch them that way. It's funny, they kind of run head first and then flop over the fence, or get stuck in the fence if they're real little. But the other ones will just run through it, and then you're chasing them around outside the paddock trying to let them in. But they don't usually go too far. They usually just hang out right next to the paddock. They just don't want you to actually get a hand on them, unless they're friendly and they're really used to you. So it's good to have a good relationship with your sheep. Have some trust and have them be a little bit more friendly. It's not totally necessary, but when you're doing what we're doing here, we're just utilizing sheep net. We don't have a barn, we don't have a catch, we don't have none of that stuff. So we gotta make sure and have a lot of trust with our sheep. Makes everything a lot easier. But there's a few that still are really wild. I've never really tried to catch them, and they've definitely not become more tame on their own, so they don't really let you get close to them. Definitely a beautiful morning here. You got woodpeckers. You can hear all the different birds. I just noticed that her belly's hanging pretty low, but I don't see a bag forming or anything. If she starts forming a bag, then I'll know she is. But how you doing there, Holly? Hi, Holly girl. I know. I know. Did I take you away from your mom? You'll be all right. We'll make sure you stay stuffed with forage. But guys, if you are looking for a way that you can have some livestock that you can raise on your own property, and you think that you need barns and perimeter fencing all the way around your property, and you're going to have to, because you're keeping them in a barn and keeping them in a small space all the time, you know, you're going to have to medicate them constantly, and you're counting up feed cost and things like that. That does work for a lot of people. They've kind of made it work, but as far as if they're making any money off of it, I couldn't really say that they are. You know, people have ways of lowering their feed cost a lot of the time, but what we're doing here, we have almost zero feed cost. You know, the hay that we have did come from our own property, so that didn't cost us anything. The little bit of grain that we do buy, we go through maybe a couple bags of grain a year, but like I said, it's not to supplement their feed. It's more just to help with moving them around and stuff every once in a while. Most of the time I don't use it to move them because I'm just taking them from one fence to the next. So I can just set up their next fence and open up a chunk of their paddock and let them into the next one, and they just run right through. You know, we don't spend money on medication. We give them a CDT shot when they're a lamb, and that's it. That's pretty much the only medication they get. The only other stuff that we give them is minerals and sometimes some baking soda. You know, I don't really, if I didn't have property to run them on, I probably wouldn't attempt to have any animals like this, because I just prefer to see them out here on pasture. And I prefer to make sure that they can move to clean ground when they want to, when they need to. I don't like seeing them just standing around in their waste. You know, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying that I just don't prefer to do it that way. I prefer to do it out here on pasture. It's more their natural habitat. I don't have to medicate them. You know, I do use these for meat. So we butcher some of the rams and we use that for meat. And you know, honestly, I don't really want to be eating a bunch of medications. You know, and the worming medicine, all this parasite medication that everybody has to use, and even though they say it doesn't really work all that well anymore, but they're constantly having to worm their sick sheep because they're constantly on the same dirty ground. If I had to do it that way, I wouldn't do it at all. But we're out here on pasture. They're moved to fresh ground every single day. And if you do have some ground and you'd like to raise your own livestock for meat, sheep are a great option. You don't need to spend a lot of money on barns and fencing and medication and feed, but it's a different it's a totally different way of doing it than most people are used to. Most people wouldn't consider doing it this way. It's the old school method of, first thing you do is you put up a perimeter fence. You know, you got to take out a mortgage so you can build a barn. You got to buy thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of handling equipment. Got to have a tractor. Got to have a truck, all this stuff. We haven't bought any of that stuff to do this. And we've been doing this now for over a couple years. It does have its challenges, it's different, but utilizing just the sheep net. But it does keep the predators out as long as you do it right. You got to keep your tight fence, and you got to make sure that it's closed on the bottom and you don't leave any gaps anywhere, and it does a good job. But we also have a good presence out here to keep the predators away. So if we were just letting them run around our property every day, they'd probably start getting a little too comfortable.